The Global Leadership Foundation is an organization of about 30-some former heads of government or foreign ministers, or in some cases, highly able retired diplomats. We're now no longer in service, and that means that we're in a position to draw upon our experience without people assuming we have some other agenda. What we try to do is help the leaders of developing countries who are facing really serious political challenges to have someone they can talk to about how some of those challenges might be undertaken. If you're the head of a developing country, it's relatively easy to hire a legal advice or an engineering advice or health advice. Not so easy on political advice, because in a lot of those countries, the trust levels between the head of a government and people working with that person are very low, and suspicion is high. So we are in effect virtual peers. We've been through some of these issues before, and we can help people take a look, that maybe a fresh look at issues they know better than we do, but from the context of experiences that we have. We have a couple of rules about it. We are very careful not to advertise our presence. Our view is that if a government is going to undertake a difficult change, they should get the credit for that. There should not be a dilution of attention to outsiders who come in. Secondly, we respond or have so far to invitations only. We don't go and knock on the door and say, "You need us," although we sometimes try to identify people who, if they knew of us, would think they needed us, and make our credentials known to them. The organization was founded by FW DeKlerk, and really, in a sense, founded for him, because he had played such a central role, he and Mr. Mandela, in making possible this extraordinary transition in South Africa. And he then went on to become vice president to Mr. Mandela's presidency for a term. When he left, a lot of the people who were his admirers believed that both his personality and his style and reputation should have a much broader understanding and application. And so the organization was established. We are not for profit. We enjoy the support of foundations, corporations, individuals who think that this kind of work is necessary. One of our challenges is that we are not well enough known by the people who need us. That's in part because we don't advertise what we're doing, and it's in part because some of these societies where our help would be needed are relatively insular, and they may not know they have a problem, or more particularly, they may not think that there is someone outside their sphere who could be of help in resolving a problem. So we have to work at making sure that our potential is understood by either people themselves who are in those kinds of positions as governors, or people who know governors and we consequently work with a number of international organizations, regional organizations like the African Union, the United Nations, others, and sometimes they come to us and they say, "We have done as much as we can here. We'd like to recommend that X talk to you and see if there's something more that can be done." One of the more typical, particularly in our earlier days, was to take a look at situations that had some similarity to what was happening in South Africa. A very divided society where leaders had decided that if they didn't come together, there would be real chaos and something had to be done. And they found a way to get that done that involved extraordinary daring, but also tolerance and understanding on the part of leaders. And that lesson is fairly well known, but that situation occurs not quite as dynamically or dramatically as it did in South Africa. It occurs in other countries. And we are able to go to countries with comparable situations and talk about whether that South African approach may work. And sometimes heads of government say, "No, it doesn't apply to us." And sometimes they say, "Well, this part might." So that's one area that where we approach it. A second are areas where there has been an attempt by international agencies before, sometimes the UN, sometimes others, and for one reason or another, they, as formal public institutions, cannot get to the end of the road, get a goal accomplished. So we who have less formal status, we are all simply formers. We have no existing responsibility now in any of our governments. We consequently have a little more freedom to act and advise, and that's a category of issue where we're able to be of help. To some degree now, we had previously been focusing principally upon advice to the heads of government about issues that they were interested in. In some cases, there is an institution in a government that needs some help. For example, an electoral commission very often. They're key to the effectiveness of the development of real democracy in many developing countries. And yet it's not simply something you can set up easily. There are lessons as to what works and what doesn't. And even when you have one set up, there's sometimes people who were enthusiastic to have one put in place are not so enthusiastic about working with it once it's there. And there are some lessons that we can apply in a case like that as to how to make that work. So all of those are the kinds of issues that we can deal with.